Hi, Victoria.
Hello, nice to be here.
Oh, thanks for coming to talk with me. And I do love our talks, and it's really good to have a chat with you today. And it's a really important topic actually because we're looking at communicating to the general public about the importance of considering the training approaches that they have when supporting their dogs. And I think it must be so confusing. I think for the general public because there's so much information out there now, and a lot of it's really contradictory. And what we're looking at doing as part of this event is trying to give them access to the very latest in understanding and methods and the kind of tools that we use and the reasons why. So when I was thinking about having a chat about this, you're my obvious choice, of course, because we've spoken on various things before, and I know it's a real passion for you, Victoria. And of course, you show this on television. We'll talk about the TV series in a moment, but uh, let's start off then with thinking about why do you think we've ended up with so many different approaches that are still put out there to the general public when we have so much science that actually points towards the thing that's not only the most efficient but best for the dog.
I think it's really difficult for people to change their belief system and habits. And if they've learnt one way or they see something in the media that is done one way, they'll do it too because it looks like it's successful. And indeed, sometimes it is. So they will replicate it or they will seek out professionals to help them that replicate what they see. And it's very difficult, even amongst our profession, to move it into or move professionals into a more sort of enlightened approach. It's difficult for anybody to make changes. But in my own journey as a trainer, which is now 25 years, on and off screen, my journey, I've evolved too. And I feel like that sort of evolution from when I first started to now is really important for every single trainer in our industry, regardless of what you believed when you first started. We now are in this incredible world of we are receiving so much knowledge from the study of dogs in the right way. We're not talking about, laboratory testing of animals. We're talking about pet owners who bring their dogs in, or guardians, caretakers, I should say, that bring their dogs to universities around the world so that they can discover cognitive processes. And if you think about it, I mean, in the sort of the research, dogs really weren't, there wasn't a lot of research in dogs till about 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and now it's exploded. Everybody's researching dogs and cognition, and what they're discovering, I think, validates our approach. The fact is that these incredible animals that we have in our homes, these predators that we have in our homes that we live with, which I always think is amazing, but these incredible animals are crying out to be understood. It's just humans are taking a long time to understand them. But when they do, they see that maybe some of the things that they're seeing on television, some of the things that they might read about, where that's old school. There need to be changes. And that's where positive training comes in.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you mentioned there, actually, and I think it is hard for people to maybe look at what they've been doing, maybe for the last 10 or 20 years, and think maybe I need to rethink this. What you've just said there, we could have easily been talking about children, and I'd invite people to think about that, actually. The stuff that we did to children 20, 30 years ago, we wouldn't do now. In the UK, we don't have corporal punishment anymore, for example. We don't have this notion that somehow the child should do as they're told, regardless of how they're feeling or what they're trying to communicate. And that's more widely accepted now in society, I think. And that's what we've seen in this transition to more understanding about dogs, I think, over time. So this kind of comes down to then, I guess, a point around regulation, I think, then, because We people at the moment, they can call themselves a trainer, they can call themselves a behaviorist, they can even, some of them get on television and still continue to put out information that's like 30 odd years old.
Yeah, look, we still, the dog training profession, I think we're still scrambling to be recognized as a profession. In fact, it's an incredibly important profession with now 10 million dogs and more in the UK. It is really, really important that people understand them, people are safe around them. And if you have a dog, that you are responsible. And if you don't have a dog, that you understand how to interact with a dog, because whether you like them or not, you will be around them at some point, or your children will be around them at some point. So I feel like our industry, we're still scrambling to be recognized and taken seriously. And I remember, you go on shows, for example, when I used to do sort of more of the morning shows, and both here in the United States and in the UK, and it's always like, oh, the pet segment comes in the end, and it's all fun, and it's all, and it wasn't really taken seriously. Now it's changing, which is good, but still there's no regulation, which is the reason why VSA, the Victoria Stilwell Academy, is proud to be a founding member of the UK Dog Behaviour and Training Charter, which of course is the brainchild of you, Andy, which is really, I think, a game changer, because if we're not going to have legislation, well, we're going to have to regulate ourselves as an industry. So this is an organization that a lot of the founding members of big schools, big organizations, that people can feel comfortable if they come to our website, that they will get a trainer that follows certain philosophies and certain protocols. Number one being humane, not just towards dogs, but towards people as well.
That's really important, because the charter looks at our approach towards the animals, and also our approach with fellow humans. The professional conduct side of things, which is sadly lacking, I think, when there's no accountability.
Yes.
And that's the thing that the charter is really built on, is the accountability. And I think what we're hoping through this, all the kind of educational side of things through the Summer of Love event, is that the general public can be better informed and realize that ultimately they have the power to think, actually, do you know what? I love my dog, and I understand more now about my dog's care and support needs, and I don't want to have things that could be potentially damaging done to my dog in the name of training. I want my dog to be supported like I would my child, like I would want to be supported myself. So it's important then to kind of advocate for that and to reach out. And this is where the charter makes that easier, of course, because they just need to look for a professional who is part of a charter organization, and they can be more chance of getting that. But if they haven't got a charter member locally to them, or they're just looking to find that dog trainer, what are the things that you think the general public could be looking for or asking that dog trainer to try and ensure they're going to be getting the most latest up-to-date knowledge? Because I think we owe it to our dogs to know the very latest thing if we're going to step into their world and help them and teach them.
I think one of the most powerful questions is, what equipment do you use? And how do you discipline a dog when it behaves badly? The answer to that is very telling. Now, if you are going with a more, maybe of a more the old style, I call it the medieval dog trainers, if you're looking for them, then they might be using equipment like choke collars or shock collars, which we hope are going to truly be banned in the UK, or they're going to be using techniques for discipline. When they talk about discipline, they will be saying, well, when you look out for buzzwords like, if your dog is trying to dominate you, and you have to make your dog submissive towards you, don't let your dog walk out the door in front of you, or sit on the sofa, or sleep in your bed with you. You start to look at these words. Dominance, you've got to be the pack leader. Look for pack leader. Look for these words that, like, oh yeah, those are the old school types. But interestingly enough, even amongst the sort of the positive community, if you're actually talking, if somebody says, well, if a dog's behaving badly, that still puts a red flag, because I'm like, what do you mean about bad behavior? What's bad behavior? Like, I don't say that dog's behaving badly at all, because that immediately blames the dog, when actually the dog is just behaving in the only way it knows how, in the environment and the situation that it's in, and it's an emotional response to that environmental situation. It's not saying this is good, this is bad. We're putting the label of good and bad on it. So immediately, if I was looking for a trainer and I was like, how do you discipline a dog? If it's behaving badly, I would want my trainer to come back to me and say, well, actually, let's look at this. It's, yes, we do believe in guidance. Yes, we can't have dogs running around doing what they want, but there's ways to guide a dog to making the right choices. And let's look at this bad behavior. That's a label that we humans put on behavior we don't like. We call it bad. Behavior we do like, we call it good. So when the dog's behaving badly, we're going to blame the dog and tell the dog off. But that's not the answer that you want to hear. You want to hear the fact of, actually, don't really believe in good or bad behavior. I just believe in behavior, right? Yeah. And we're just going to maybe change the way your dog perceives a situation. But we're actually going to ask why. Why is your dog jumping up, humping, lunging at the end of the lead, aggressing at somebody? Why is your dog spinning in circles? Why is your dog protecting its food bowl or not allowing you close to its food bowl? See, even I put a label on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the answer. That's the really enlightened trainer that you want to find. That asks why.
And also, I think that's some brilliant examples there and thoughts, I think, for the general public. And you and I have discussed before about the challenge, the kind of friction between task and care, or quite often when we get a professional, we're kind of stuck in task. Like, say, how do a dog to stop my dog barking, jumping up, or whatever it is. There's so many of the general public that you and I have worked with who have done these methods, the more aversive methods, and they felt uncomfortable with it, but they thought, well, this is the way we need to do it. And I think one thing to bear in mind is, and if you feel uncomfortable with it, we need to listen to that, because there is an alternative way. And I think the thing about care approach is it's just about learning from the other first, as you say. And I think a good progressive professional will be doing that. And it's a shame we've got this narrative that seems to be being pushed. And I would really think, invite the general public listening to this now to think about this. You and I both work with some of the most complex cases, the cases that people might perceive to be dangerous. And there are those who use those specifically, those what they might class as, in inverted commas, red zone dogs, as they like to call them, as examples about why a positive approach isn't enough, because you've got to use these horrendous tools. And yet you and I prove day in, day out that actually it is not only enough, it is the only way from a dog welfare point of view. Because we talked about this off air before, haven't we, about every dog we work with who is in that category, I've found, was in pain. Physical pain often, but emotional pain or social pain. And I would say that when those colleagues who use the aversives, when we ask them questions like, do you understand about physical pain? Do you understand about trauma? Do you understand about social safety? And if they say, well, yes, of course we do, but they still end up using a tool like a shock collar, it shows that they can't. And often the general public know their dog sensitivities. That's the interesting thing. And we're just there to support them in validating what they've already knew.
Yeah, and I really love what you say about that, because certainly on my show in the beginning, It's Emil the Dog is very much like, because it came out at the same time as Super Nanny, and it was all about experts going, no. But don't go into a place and think that you know more about that dog than the person who lives with that dog 24/7, because you do not. And so, and the most important teacher in the dog's life is going to be that guardian, that caregiver. So there definitely is we need to learn from them as much as possible about what the dog is doing. And then we can build up a picture. And I know that you and I have said this before, but it is like being a detective. It truly is, because you are going to homes, you're picking up clues, or even at group classes, you're picking up clues from human behavior, dog behavior, environment, situation, how the dog is reacting, what are the stimuli, what is the context, and we're picking up clues from that. And from that, we can find out why. So can I just give an example? It's quite a common example, but I've just filmed another 10 episodes of It's Me or the Dog. And on there, we have a dog called Marley, and he humps continuously his person. She's a lovely lady. She adores her dog so much. She's such a great caregiver. But he humps her constantly, humps her outside, he humps her in the home. And he's also started to stare at things, and then kind of like bite behind his neck. So she's had trainers in before, nothing's worked. She tried everything, nothing's worked. And so the expectation is that I'm going to go in to stop the dog from humping. Task orientated. How am I going to do that? I'm going to teach the dog to do something else, right? So maybe I'm going to teach it a different skill. That's fine. But when I saw why the dog was humping, when I asked why, when I took time to listen to the dog, by listening, I mean observing this dog, I went, I get it. First of all, this dog is way uncomfortable in the situation, doesn't want to be here, and is humping her to say, please, can we leave? And at home, the dog doesn't feel settled because it's so busy. There's too many people living in the house. And the dog is saying, please give me your wonderful word, Andrew, please give me relief. And just by understanding that and telling her that, she is now listening to her dog. And guess what? With no task-orientated training at all, with no cues, with no nothing, her dog is not humping her anymore. Because she understood why. Also, why is he starting to stare off into space? Is this some kind of epilepsy? Is this some kind of, disorder? And then why is he starting to always kind of like flick back and look? And I'm like, I think your dog's in pain. I think there's something maybe on the right side, the back. Thank you, Sarah Fisher. I think your dog is in pain. Has hip dysplasia. She took it to the vet, and they were like, no, it's fine. But then they did a deeper dive, and they did x-rays and everything. And even under sedation, when they manipulated the dog's hip, it yelped. Hip dysplasia. So this dog was humping because it felt uncomfortable, and it's also in pain. It couldn't relax, and it couldn't really sleep at night because it was in pain. Andy, if a medieval trainer had gone in there, this dog would be told off.
Yeah. Do you know, that's such a powerful example. And I think what you just described there really eloquently is this notion of correcting behavior. That's a prime example of the thing that, what are we correcting? And when we think about that example about, behavior is often an expression of need for relief, as you say, need for safety, need for seeking connection. And then the dog is being corrected for that. And guess what? It might work because the dog might think, oh, do you know what? I can't communicate then. And that either has the thing of the dog just not communicating, or down the line, they're going to have to communicate more. And guess what? That could be more aggressive in inverted commas. So I think that's a beautiful example. And this is what's so great about what's happening with the TV shows that you're involved with. Because I think what's amazing for anybody, and this is what makes you unique, I think, as a TV trainer on TV, is to see the evolution of you through all this time, because you've got such a body of work, and you being humble enough to think, you know what, I'm going to keep growing and I'm going to keep doing stuff. Whereas a lot of the other people on telly, they're doing the same thing they were doing 20 years ago, right? And I think this is important for us. And the new generation with the new It's Me or the Dog, and also over here in the UK with the Dog Academy, which has got another part of the series probably out now as you're watching this now, has really taken that to seeing the professionalism in what we do, listening to the caregiver, joining those dots, thinking about how you create that thing, and care first. You know, somebody said to me recently when I was giving my a little kind of presentation on task and care that they said, oh, so care first and task will follow. And I thought, yes, let's get a t-shirt. Let's get a t-shirt for that.
Fantastic. Love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. 100%. And, you know, yeah, the Dog Academy, Channel 4, Thursday at 8 p.m. Watch it. So you're going to get so many tips for your own dogs. But it was really important for us to have a show that where people could see that connection very clearly. Now, they do see it on It's Me or the Dog, but here's where we really go into it and explore it. And where you are going to see, you are going to see us teaching dog skills. You are going to see us, but at its heart of it, some of us, like Kamal Fernandez, he's a very good, he competes in obedience, right? So, and that's his thing, and he's very good at it, and he has that real skill. When he's working on a behavior issue, he's not going to utilize that. He's going to ask why first before he does anything. So regardless of, like, you know, Joe Pay, big, she loves agility and different kinds of teaching tricks and things like that. But when she deals with behavioral issues, she's asking why. All of these trainers with their different skill sets or their different things that they like to focus on will all ask why first. And that's what we need to be doing. It has to be care first. You can totally disagree with the way that I train dogs, but I don't think you can disagree with this one very important fact. We trainers, and if you are a professional, you need to be ensuring that the headline with your client is safety. Safety for the general public, safety for the dog, safety for the family, safety for the public. Because at the end of the day, we need to have dogs that are emotionally balanced as much as possible, that understand how to live in our crazy world, that are understood, that are celebrated and respected. Because it's all about safety. I have a duty as a trainer to keep the public safe. And that is my most important job. But also my important job is to make sure that what I do is humane.
Yes. And that's a really powerful point, isn't it? Because you and I both see the value in us as professionals, because we owe it to our client and the dog that we work with to have had the very latest understanding. And when you look at the mass of information out there, we know that is about looking at the dog as a whole, asking those questions why. I hear some who are more proponents of aversive training say, well, you know, they always keep going on about the science, but they don't understand the reality of what the dog needs. What they're actually saying is, my need to control the behavior of this animal is more important than my desire to try and learn something else.
Oh, yes,
and I think we have to see
there's a lot of ego.
A lot of ego, and it is, you know, you mentioned about the amazing trainers on the Dog Academy that join you, and by the way, I think that in itself is a powerful message about collaboration, and I think, you know, I don't think anybody else on telly would share that space like you have done with these amazing people. But like you say, you know, with Kamala, I remember speaking to the wonderful Craig Ogilvie, who's really into training, but he said to me, when I go and do a behavior case, I have to check my ego at the door. I know that I could get this dog to do pretty well anything through training, but actually I need to turn up and hear their story. And that's a really powerful thing. And that's what this is all about. When we think about it, there's three things I think for me that unite us all. And we can all think about this, that for those of you listening, just think back to your own life, your own childhood, your own education. First is we want to feel heard. And that's important, isn't it? And I think we don't want to be dismissed or corrected, especially when we're trying to communicate need. And we all know what that feels like when that's happened. We've all experienced that, definitely at school quite often. Secondly, to feel safe. Our brains are literally designed for it. Like you've just said there, safety is important, physical safety, but also emotional and social safety. And to feel relief. This is the whole point of feelings, right? When we feel something uncomfortable, it's a call to arms to try and do something about it. So we owe it to our dogs to think about those things. And it doesn't take much, I don't think, on a very human level to understand that actually, we need to be more available to what our dogs are trying to communicate to us, and the dangers of just shutting them down. Because the reality is this, I think, Victoria, and we can all tell our dogs off. I think that's really important to recognize. We can all have those moments where we're like, will you just go away?
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
We can all be that. But when we do that, whether it's to our dog, to our child, to our loved one, what we're kind of saying is, I don't care how you feel right now. I just need you to not do that, or I need you to do that. And I think that is the thing when I think about heavy aversives, especially shock collars, like say, hopefully we will have that ban in place by next year in the UK. But aversive training is the ultimate in task at all costs. And that has a price to pay.
It really does. It has a price to pay, not just on the emotional health of the dog, but in the emotional health of the people as well. Because I do believe that most people don't want to do that kind of thing to their dogs. I mean, there are some people that don't really care. It's obedience at all costs, right? But I think most people want to do the best by their dogs, and they go online and they get lulled in by fancy marketing and by like guarantees and, your dog will stop this, and they get lulled by media. I mean, look, I'm in the media. I know how like a 30-minute show looks like. Well, we go from here and then we come, and it's all like that. And that's why on later series of It's Me or the Dog, I'm like, this is work in progress, and this is going to take time. And some things do happen extremely quickly, right? As soon as you listen to the dog, boom, you can turn it around in a second. But media is very seductive, and especially seductive when you, and a lot of these certain production companies, they want to see drama. They want to see drama. They want to see, especially men, fighting with a dog and dominating that dog. And they just, they want to see that. And you're like, okay, maybe good television. I have to think that that's not, but actually just watch it with the sound off and watch the dog, and then you'll just be heartbroken. So we're still seduced by that. Television is very powerful, and we are still seduced by what we see on that. So if we see a particular person doing that, we're going to do it with our own dogs. So that's why we're like, with It's Me or the Dog and with the Dog Academy, we are trying to seduce people to say, look, this is what we do. This is the reality. This is how long it might take. But this is humane. And we're finally listening to dogs, right? So again, like, what media do you want to watch? To go out honest, positive reinforcement is not that exciting to watch, right? It's just not, it's not. But the fascination of like, oh my gosh, actually I can use that with my dog, and I'm not going to hurt my dog in the process. This is amazing. And that's why I think the Dog Academy and It's Me or the Dog, they are so powerful in what they are trying to deliver.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's awareness. It's giving people more awareness. And we can't make people do or not do. But the general public need more awareness. And they want it. They want it because I think that's important. And that's the point of our conversation today, and this event, and the wonderful work that you do, and all your graduates from VSA and all your VSBDT trainers, of course, and this is bringing this back around to the charter again. I think we need to, as an industry, show that we can draw a line now and move forward a little bit, because it isn't a question of opinion anymore. That used to be said, oh, it's just a question of opinion. The science shows us, but did we really need the science actually? Because how would I like to be treated? How would I like my child? If somebody had a child who was, in inverted commas, misbehaving, and somebody said, "Oh, I'll show you. I'll make sure they don't do it again, and we'll do this and this," you'd be pretty horrified by that. So it's no different. And I think people are just waiting for a different message, because we need to look at it in society, I think, because when we think about the increase in bites, especially, and that kind of thing, we have everybody trying to blame everybody else, but ultimately it has to be because we're not listening to the dogs enough. It just has to be that, whatever way you want to look at it.
And interestingly, just regarding science, even though the dog is being studied a lot more, let's take aggression, there really hasn't been a lot of, now more, but in the past, there's not a lot of scientific research on aggressive behavior. And why? As I said, that's changing now. So we're pretty much left to devise it, to find out why and like what do we do. But there is a reason why I still value aggressive behavior, because I value it because the dog is telling me how it feels. And so I'm not going to dominate it, suppress it, and put a shock collar on it and zap the dog. I'm not, because I want this dog to feel better. And so understanding that the science there does support many, many different things now. And even with aggressive behavior, we're now finding out more information about why dogs are aggressing and what is going on inside the dog's brain. And this is fascinating, because the people out there will be like, well, why, Andrew, do you keep on talking about children? Dogs are not children. Well, here's the thing. Most of the research that has been done on aggressive behavior in people and in dogs are actually done on mice and rats. Why? Because the brain's very similar. And so dog, rat, /mice, /human, we can find out information. And I don't like any of that kind of research, but that's still what's going on. So the fact is that we are very, not completely similar, of course, but there are so many similarities, we can't ignore them anymore.
No, and I think also when we look at some people listening right now, I've got a human psychology background, and I think it's really interesting when we think about attachment theory, which is now very much held up as being really important for looking at the importance of safe, secure social attachments. Were done on studies on monkeys and dogs back in the day. Social pain hypothesis done on dogs back in the day. So actually a lot of this stuff, we're just going full circle and realizing maybe us humans aren't so very different after all. Maybe we need to kind of check our human ego in and recognize, actually, if you've got a dog who is trying to bite, guess what? They're not feeling great. And what you just said there about using aversives and suppressing things, when you think about it, it makes sense that you can't get a dog to be safer to be around if that dog is feeling less safe.
I love that. Absolutely.
And it's dangerous, isn't it? Because you 100%. And I, we work with so many dogs where when that particularly heavy aversive training seemed to work for a bit, and then they leave, and that's all fine. I had a dog a little while ago where the people even left a 5-star review for a trainer who'd used a shock collar on their dog, a dog that used to lunge and bark at children. But then 7-8 months later, the dog bit a child. And now we had a destruction order, which luckily we managed to repeal. And luckily the dog didn't do much physical damage, I'm sure psychologically. But when you think about it, from the dog's point of view, the problem for the dog was not feeling safe around children. The trainer had made the problem the behavior, which is looking at it the wrong way around.
Behavior is a symptom. How the dog is feeling. That's it. You just suppress it. You just suppress You're not getting rid of it. You're just suppressing it for a time. But the dog still feels the same, and probably now even worse. So that's the tragedy. And so you're right, it's not about opinion. It's actually about what science tells us, about what observation tells us. And the proof is out there. I mean, we see the success. And it's devastating. You know, I live in the United States. There's still a lot of shock collars around. However, one of the largest superstores for dogs here, Petco, has banned the use of shock collars, or has stopped selling shock collars.
Wow,
in their stores. They still have electric fences, but they've stopped for training. That's huge. Do you know how much that is? Around 60 million a year of revenue that they're losing.
But it's a great statement on behalf of that company about what their ethical grounding is. And I think we have to bear in mind that this is why it's important to try and get somebody who is accredited in the UK, charter-backed, you know, because even if somebody uses reinforcement training, doesn't mean that they're necessarily competent with it. And that's why you need somebody who has not only experience but qualifications, because you want the very, very best for your dog.
Yeah.
But I would argue that if a dog who has had, say, a bite history, has ended up with a suitably accredited progressive trainer or behaviorist, because the owners, the caregivers, understand the dog's potential risks, they've got a good management and adaptation plan in place to make sure they can keep the dog and other people safe, and they've engaged in a process of helping the dog feel safe and identify the problems and ask all the whys, the chances of there being an issue, even if that dog still struggles sometimes, because of the great advice around management and adaptation, is less likely that that dog is going to find themselves in that situation again. I've worked with so many dogs where just an aversive approach, you're just hoping that that dog thinks, you know what, it's not worth communicating anymore. Because if one day, like with that case I gave, that dog thinks, you know what, I need to communicate now because I don't have the relief I need, social pain, physical pain, emotional pain, then you've got a bigger problem on your hands.
Dogs are not, and I think this is also a really important point. Again, media very seductive. The dog is cured. The dog is this. No. Please stop thinking of dogs as robots. They're not. They are sentient beings. They feel things. And it's really important that people understand that they have an emotional, rich emotional life like we do. And so that if you do have a dog that is aggressing, that exactly what you said, Andy, sometimes that dog's not going to feel so great. Just like a human, even if the human's been through therapy or the human's on medication or whatever, sometimes that person's not going to feel so great. We cannot fix dogs. We cannot fix people. We can make things easier, safer, better. But let's not look at dogs as robots, please.
Well, that's a great note to end on. And that's the whole notion of this kind of event really, is to celebrate our love for dogs. Because, you know, I can't actually think of anybody that I've worked with that didn't love their dog, you know, that didn't care. And that's probably, you know, obviously they've employed me, so they do care. But you get some people, of course, who just, for maybe because of their own trauma or their own experiences, who knows, that they're not that great. But the vast majority of people do love their dogs. And this is about a celebration of our love for dogs. And that word love, you know, it's very easy to say, I love my dog because of all the things they do for us. But if it's true love, we have to be available also to what that dog needs from us. And that's about understanding their care and support needs and to celebrate their emotional well-being, which is what this is all about. So thank you so much, Victoria, for giving us your time. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I love all the things you're doing. And I love that you're able to be vulnerable and put yourself on telly and do these things. And the collaboration with the Dog Academy is amazing with some great people. So if you haven't seen Victoria on the TV shows, please make sure you check those out. We've got a new series of It's Me or the Dog being filmed at the moment. Is that right? So that's going to be
Yeah, we finished filming and now it's editing, and so it'll be out sometime in the summer.
Right.
Yeah, and then of course the Dog Academy is, you can see it now.
Oh, now, yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.